I was a freelance photographer, but I had contracts with agencies. I was the only woman that ever had the contract for the Triple Crown of surfing. And I had that contract for several years in a row, and just no other woman had ever had that, and they didn't think a woman could do it. And you have to be as much of an athlete to shoot those pictures because you're working in the water as the athletes themselves. Because I worked for outdoor clothing companies primarily, my work was mostly outside, doing extreme sports. So it was a really fun way to make a living. But my main job, more important than photography, was being a mom. I got charged with murder one, which was totally against the Violence Against Women Act. I was in prison for 12 years. I was 38 when I went to prison, and I'm 51 now. I just got out. It was a nightmare that just never ended. He was an athlete, but he wasn't a jock in the sense that he would much rather watch Masterpiece Theater than football on TV. And so that was enormously attractive to me. He choked me. It was this weird incident because it was almost like when it was over, I mean, I didn't know what to think. It was so unexpected and so out of character, I thought. It drew us closer together because it was like, okay, this horrible thing happened, and now we'll work together to get through it, you know. I know that sounds really screwed up, but that's actually what it did, because I didn't ever, he was so remorseful and apologetic that I felt really badly for him. And I believed him when he said he wouldn't do it again. So that was the first time. And then, of course, it was not the last. He started noticing that I could kind of disassociate from physical pain. So then he would take it out on my kids because that would make me crazy. And the fear of him killing them, you know, because he was so big. He was twice my size. He weighed 100 pounds more than I did, and he was really strong. I lived in terror all the time. Everybody felt helpless. I had no idea what to do, but the police weren't going to do anything about it. And that was why everybody felt so hopeless, because I had called the police, and the police had been buddy up with him and laughing and joking. And I mean, I'd been strangled to the blackout point in front of my children. And the cops said, oh, you just need counseling. And so what that told me and everybody else is I wasn't getting any help. They don't tell men, okay, you made a threat to your wife, you're banned from the state now. You leave your house, your job, your friends, your entire life because you're in the wrong. They expect a woman who's done nothing to do that. My father said, he's going to kill you or the kids someday, and you know, you're so little that you can't do anything. You have to take this gun, and if he does anything like that again, you have to use it. I carried my gun with me everywhere I went. I kept it in my camera bag, and I kept the bullets in one compartment and the gun in another. I never looked back. I didn't want to take the time in case I had missed. You know, I was just on a mission to get away at that point. And so I honestly didn't know for sure that he was dead until the next day when I was at the police station telling them, and I was black and blue and everything. And, you know, they sent someone up there, and the cop looked at me and he said, "He's dead."
It's a national disgrace that we're putting the most victimized women in prisons, and sometimes for their whole lives, or at least the life sentence. And you find out that, you know, we've got a culture of invisibility about these women. I mean, very few people think of women as being in prison, and yet we're escalating the number of women in prison so high. I mean, the last 20 years, women have been going to prison at twice the rate or more than the men, percentage-wise. And that's just turning into a war on women in the legal system. Most of the time, the women are the ones who are killed. I mean, this percentage is much smaller in terms of those who get into life sentences than those who actually are killed. And the shelter movement has helped, but you know what? It's helped the men more in terms of their being alive than the women.
In any other state where there is self-defense for battered women, I could have been within my rights to shoot Chris years before I did, but I didn't want to. And I kept trying to find another way, trying to find another way, trying to find another way. And finally, it's like, your children are going to die, and it'll be your fault.
Oregon doesn't have the battered woman syndrome as a defense, so we have self-defense, but that has limitations when it comes to battered women, because sometimes he isn't running out the door. You know, it isn't that conflict at that moment, but to a battered woman, once she reaches that level of knowing he's going to kill me the next time, they're in that conflict. Either it's my life or his, yet it may be when he's sleeping, or it may be that she pulled the gun around and went off, but you know, the circumstances have to be really understood.
I'm like a ghost in my old life. I'm not welcome because time has moved on. It's a lot more difficult than I had anticipated, because when you're in prison, you have to be numb just to get through it. And now that I'm out, I confront the losses that were just enormous in every segment of my life. And then missing my children's whole childhoods. That's the most painful part, because, you know, that's just gone and you can't ever get that back.
Liysa, what would you say to other women out there experiencing abuse at the hand of their partner, lover, husband?
Tell people about what's going on. And I would say to the women that aren't being abused right now, call your legislatures. Get this issue fixed, because once you're in it and it's so horrifying, there seems to be almost no hope.